Hello everyone, this is DJ Zelix, aka Digital Magic from Teen Lone Wolf, here with a bit of a different video than usual. As a member of the IR, or Immersive Railroading Development Team, I seem to be finding a lot of people are confused about how to get started with Immersive Railroading, and how to set everything up really. So I've decided to make this video to kind of help out people that are new to immersive railroading, try and kind of get their footing and figure out what's going on in kind of a complete tutorial video, if you will. So I've already downloaded the files that I need. If you're going from a clean slate of Minecraft, what you will need to do is download Forge from the website, from the Forge website, and obviously install it. Now, mind you, I have my mods folder slightly different. That's just because I have my actual name on my computer, and I prefer to remain anonymous. But once you've installed that and you've got a mods folder and all that stuff, if you need help with that, there's tons upon tons of videos online on how to do that. That's no problem. Once you've got that, you will need 3 different mods. Now, technically, one of them you don't actually need, but it's highly, 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 highly recommended because it will make life a lot easier for you. Those mods are Immersive Engineering. You can get that up on the Immersive Engineering wiki, I believe. Just search up Immersive Engineering Minecraft, you'll find it. Immersive Railroading, you can get that from the Discord, or if you really want to, you can compile it from the GitHub. I'd recommend going through the Discord. We've got a nice little download bar up at the top, I believe, under I think it's under development, or it's under one of the files. Ask somebody. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, actually. But that, and you will also need the track API. So the track API is essentially allows the mod to work. It contains a lot of functions and methods that are necessary for the mod to work normally. So now that we've got that all installed in the mod folder, where do we go from now? So I have if we go over to here, I have a nice lovely starter Minecraft world all set up. You'll notice that there are a bunch of mods also that I've got installed. Those are for other stuff. This is the same mod pack that I use for testing out, or doing resource pack testing and doing the recordings for the spotlights. So, mind you, I'm in creative mode, but what you're going to need to do first is get this right here, the Immersive Railroading Manual. This can be made with 6 steel and a book. Again, that's part of the reason why I said you're going to want Immersive Engineering, because steel, while you can technically craft steel in Immersive Railroading, supposedly, it's a lot easier if you just go with Immersive Engineering or Mechanism. Mechanism works too. Whichever method you work, as long as it's an ingot steel, according to the Forge or dictionary, or steel, or ingot dictionary, I think is what it's actually classified as. But you'll get this. So the first thing you're going to want to do is, if you shift right click, you'll see down at the bottom it will say placing. And this is going to be your full list of all the different machines you're going to need in order to essentially get started with immersive railroading. Now, the first one you're going to want is casting. And also, I'd like to point out that if you right click with it, you'll get a nice little lovely link to the GitHub wiki, which also contains all the information I'm telling you. And again, I'm in creative. If you're not in creative, it will state what all you need. But if you, and we'll also place it. But if you right click down, the ghost will create the multi-block that you need for that specific machine. In this case is the casting basin. Now, while I'm at it, let me go ahead and get the boiler machine down. The steam hammer, which is also very important. These 3 are really going to be, well, actually, hold on, because you're also going to need this. These 4, are what you're really going to need in order to make any sort of rail stock, so locomotives, tenders, passenger cars, cargo cars. You're going to need these in order to make it. Now, also, on top of that, you also have your rail machine. This is what's going to allow you to make the actual rails for the mod. Now, what you're going to need next is to make a large hammer, or a large wrench, sorry. And if you go into this, it requires 6 steel. And you'll notice that it's upside down. That's just a bug on our end. That you'll notice that that's kind of weird. Sorry. But if you correct this, you'll see that it's actually quite big. It's a rather massive item. It also does damage, as you'll see, courtesy of Cam. That was during one of his streams. Somebody mentioned that, and now you can also do damage with this. So what you're going to want to do is right-click each of these multi-blocks. Anywhere on them will work. And now we've got our full lineup of machines. Now, you'll notice that nothing's really occurring, and let me just grab a good chunk of steel. Steel is what you're going to need to make almost all of your objects for the mod. So I'm just going to throw these in here, and you'll see that they're not really doing anything. That's because all of these need energy. Now, I'm going to get a energy cube from Mechanism, specifically a creative, just because I don't want to have to deal with charging it up. And you'll see on each of these, there's a little place that's like yellow, and that's where you want to put these. For this one, it's slightly different. It's just on the top. And you'll notice this is now animating, which means that you've put it on the right spot. I don't believe that anywhere else will work. Oh, it's possible. Oh, I think it's just got an internal buffer. That's why. So anyways, if you go around, you'll see all of the various slots that you want to put these on. And you'll see is that as soon as I put this on here, we now have steel. And we've got a full tank too, in fact, which is great. So the first thing you're going to want to do once you've got all this set up is get a track blueprint. Track blueprint is very similar to the manual. You just swap out the book for a piece of paper. This will let you actually build the track, and you'll see that there's a ghost outline of what it will look like when you place it down. You can place them on diagonals also, which is really nice. And if you right click just an air, it brings up this GUI. So you can see a lot of information on how you want the tracks to be made. So we've got a couple types currently in the mod. We've got straight, which is what you'd expect it to be. A crossing, so this is what the crossing looks like. It's just a 4-way. We've got slope. Now a slope, for a quick explanation, only goes up currently. So let me just place this down, and you'll see this is going up. There's no way currently to reverse it. That's currently in the works because a lot of people have requested it. Also, the way that slope works is that the distance is how long it is, and it always rises by 1 block. I'll explain the distance in a moment. Next is turn, and also, for that matter, switch, because they're both very similar. And what's nice about them is that you can change the degrees of the turn. It doesn't change the radius. That's what the distance is. Quick explanation, that's what this number is how far you want the track to be when you place it down. So let's say I have 100, and I switch it over to straight. If I place it down, the track is going to be 100 blocks long when I place it down. But for this, for turns and switches, it is the radius of the turn. So the degrees don't change how long the track is. So let's say I have just quickly turn this around. So let's say I've got a curve right here. If I swap this to 45, it is the exact same curve. Like it is only just going 45 degrees. So imagine like a circle, if you will, and it's only going 45 degrees on that circle. So That's really how that works. So the number changes just the radius, doesn't change anything else, really. And last but not least, we have turntables. Now, turntables are kind of neat in that if I select 30, you'll see that they are rather massive. But the one thing that you may think when you're looking at this is that you've placed it down wrong. You have not. We currently do not have anything beyond what you're currently seeing. And technically we do, which is the rail bed and the rail fill, which lets you, let's just say you've got bricks and wood for these. So you'll see if I place this down, it's now got a brick underlay, if you will, which is that rail bed. And the rail bed fill is that, say if I place this in, let me swap this over to straight, and grab a block. So let's say I've got this. If you've got space underneath it, it will automatically place down the rail bed fill if you have it in your inventory. If it doesn't, it will let you know. That's because free floating track doesn't exist, as you kind of can imagine. So you'll have to kind of ignore that for now. So the way that the turntables work is that, as you can imagine, you just drive the train onto it, and you use the wrench to turn these. So, and these don't work via redstone, so I'm sorry to announce. The way that these turn is you right-click it, will turn it counterclockwise, and if you shift right-click it, it will turn it clockwise. And there are, as you can see, exactly four, or actually, if you split this up into 4 sections, you've got 4 outputs at each section. Which, if you'll look back, you'll notice we've got those. We've got the 22.5, the 45, the 67.5, and the 90 degree. That is corresponding to all of these. It's the exact same degrees also. Oops. If I go to straight, it's the exact same degrees on the placement. So you've got 90 or 0 technically. The 22.5, 45, 67.5, and again 0 or 90, depending on who you ask. So that's how that works. Next up is, how do I place down? So let me actually just get some really quick test track down so I can kind of explain all this. Also, you'll notice the rest of these. So you've got position, the position, the direction, and the gauge, and then these two tick boxes. So grade crossing is just a creates a slope on either side of this, is really all it does. The blueprint makes it so that it stays in this kind of ghost form, which is useful for figuring out paths and where you want to take the track. The way you convert it into track once you've got everything planned is shift left click it, and it will place down exactly as you have it written down. We'll quickly change the time so we don't have any problems. So once we've got, oh, actually I probably should have left that down. I'm totally prepared for this, I swear. So for the rest of these, really quickly, the position fixed is that it's, when you place it, it is positioned exactly on a block. For pixels, you can place it on it. The alignment for the position of the track is per pixel. You can see you kind of play around with it a lot. You've got pixels fixed, which means that it is that the pixel movement, but it is locked within that plane of movement. So say I want straight, I can't move it from side to side by pixels. It's side to side by fixed, but it is moving front and back via the pixels. And for the other ones, all the others, it is truly just pixel. Next you have smooth, which is literally what you'd expect it to be. It is quite literally just smooth placement. Smooth locked is same way with pixels locked. You can only go within the direction that you're wanting to go. I'm going to put that back to fixed. Direction is only really applicable for turns. So you'll see lock left is you're turning to the left no matter what your orientation is. And this is very useful for some people because the turns are not what you'd expect them to be. They're really hard to get exactly the turn you want. So use this if you have a lot of trouble with that. So lock left, lock right, and then flexible. And then you've got gauge. The way that this system's kind of interesting. So by baseline, or in the base mod, we have 5 gauges. We've got standard, which is technically 3 blocks. We've got narrow, which is technically 1 block. And I'm saying technically because these are measured exactly by millimeters between the rails. I don't have those measurements with me, but you can find them up on the wiki. So you've got narrow, Minecraft, which is the kind of outlier of it because it's the only one that doesn't have a real life equivalent. The reason why is because if you place this down, if I can place this down, man, this just does not want to place. You'll see that it is the exact same width as the actual Minecraft track. That is where that gauge comes from. And then you have, oh, you'll have to ignore that. Model. Oh, Jesus. Which is incredibly small, and you can use it for toy trains and that kind of stuff. And then the last one that comes in the base mod is Brunel. And as you can see, Brunel is pretty bloody big. You're not really going to want to use Brunel for realistically anything unless you really want to transport just a ton of cargo from place to place. We do have, well, I'll get to that in a bit. You might have noticed a couple other gauges there. I'll explain that in a second. So the way that you make these objects is you want to press type up here. Well, first of all, let me kind of explain this GUI itself. So this is how much you have in the basin for like steel and that kind of stuff. This is how much this number is how much you need, and this is how much you have put in. So you can do a single casting of whatever type you want, or you can do repeat casting, which just keeps on casting the same object until you either run out or you shift click it and you turn it off. So as you can see, it turns red when you click it. That means that that's what it's doing. Same with single casting, though automatically just turn back to normal after it's cast a single one of those. And then you can change the gauge, and this is the exact same system that you've got with the track. So if you click type, you'll see just a wide range of stuff. Now, a lot of these you will not have access to. A lot of these are add-ons, and I will explain that in a moment. What you do have is the A1 peppercorn, the big boy, the K4, E6, A5. I believe the class 38 is also in the base game. The Roger 10-wheeler, the Skookum, which, quick side note, the real life Skookum actually recently just got is being reworked, so it's actually steamed up last I checked, or it had successfully steamed up last I checked. The BR01, the DSP and P Mogul, I don't remember what railroad that is off the top of my head, sadly. The DNRG WK36, the Firefly, the Iron Duke, and the GE 40-tonner. Actually, I think, yeah, that's my bad. The handcart also is in there, along with the Alco RS1, the EMD SW 1500, the EMD SD 40-2, the GE C44-9 CW, the GE B40-8W, and the B40- or the GE B40-8, which is actually the locomotive that I happen to own in real life. So let's just say let's just pick a random locomotive, and I'll actually pick up on the Firefly. When you hover over these, and this is also true with the item itself, if you have it in your inventory, if you hover over it, you'll see this kind of blurb about the locomotive. So it says the weight, which is always in kilograms, I'd like to point out for the record, the which works made it, so the Great Western Railway, horsepower, its traction, which is always in newtons, the max speed, which is always in kilometers per hour. However, each train has a speedometer, and you can change that between kilometers per hour and miles per hour in the configuration and the gauge that is originally intended for. So let's say we choose this, and you'll see that when you choose an object, you get this kind of pop-up for it, which is the various components you can make with the crafting basin. So let's go with the frame. Let me swap this over to the correct gauge. So this is Brunel gauge, and again, you can craft, as of the moment, you can craft all of these for whichever gauge you want. We are currently working on gauge locking various locomotives, so if people want, it will only be available for that specific gauge that was intended. We do not currently have that at the moment. So, but I'm crafting this for the gauge it was intended, which is Brunel. And you'll see down here, it says 0 out of 12. Again, that's how much it's crafted. And it makes that lovely sound. And then once it's done crafting, which typically you can tell because it's done making particle effects and sound, right click it and you will get the object itself. And typically you'll get this kind of 3D model of it. And if you right click down on the track, it will place it. Very nice. So now that we have this, we can actually right click with the large wrench, and you will see how down the bottom what you're missing. So in this case, it is the wheel driver and 2 frame wheels. And over to the side, you'll see, let me do this again, where you're going to get those. So in this case, it is the casting basin. So let's go back over to the crafting basin. So we're going to need a wheel driver. And then the... actually, no, I need 2 frame wheels. My bad. And then a wheel driver. Lovely. So now that I've got those, I can come over here and right-click them onto this. And again, the objects didn't get consumed because I'm in creative. However, they are consumed during this crafting. You can actually get these objects back if you shift right-click on it. And then just right-click again and it'll place it back. So again, let me right-click with the large wrench. And it says I'm missing a smoke box, which is 1 large plate, a boiler segment, which is 6 wooden planks. I'll explain that in just a second, or kind of elaborate on that in a few seconds. And then the large firebox, which is 2 large plates. So the plates are made via the, jump over here, this, which is the plate machine. Now the plate machine works by getting a block of steel, typically you're going to want to right click this beforehand, and again you get another GUI. And I'm going to swap this over to Brunel, and then you can change the plate type. So there's 3 plate types and then boilers. So you've got the small plate, the medium plate, and the large plate. And then on top of that you've got the boiler plate. Now the boiler plate, you can see for all of these steam locomotives you've got boiler plates. So let's say the CP Huntington has a boiler segment. In this specific case, if you look here, the Brunel gauge locomotives do not have any boiler plates. That's because the boiler plates are made with wood. That is because the Brunel, these 2 locomotives, the Iron Duke and the Firefly, were made a fair time before steel really was implemented for boilers necessarily. So that's why you are using wood for the boiler segments. So let me swap this back over to large plate and change it back to day. Let me just actually quickly do this. There we go. Lovely. So if I right click on here, there we go. It gets consumed in the crafting and you get that lovely sound effect. And then you right click it once that's done and it picks up the plate. Now, the amount of plates you get back depends on the gauge. So for example, let's go with Minecraft gauge. For each block of steel, you get 2 large plates back out. But since we're with Brunel, it's only going to give me 1. So let me get another block of steel again. Actually, let me get a couple blocks of steel. Now, something of note is that you want to right click with an empty hand or something that is not steel or train related in order to pick. Actually, no, that's a lie. You need to do it with an empty hand. You need to right click with an empty hand, and that will pick up the object itself, the plate that you've just crafted. You can move away so I can talk. There we go. So now I have 3 large plates, and if I right click on this, you will see the components built. Now we need 6 wooden planks, so let me just grab 6 of those. Right click on this. Oh, did I not pick them? Oh, okay, it did place it down. I'm just an idiot. So you can see now it needs a shell, which is 2 large plates. And again, all these crafting components will be different depending on the locomotive and the gauge on how much it needs. So just be forewarned about that. Just real quickly grab these. And if I right click it again, you'll see that a bunch of stuff has appeared. And this is, if I right click it now, it will say Firefly is complete. So that means that our Firefly is now completely done. And if we right click it, we are now inside of the Firefly. Now, you'll see down at the bottom we have this lovely little GUI for locomotive information. So on the very far left, we have how much water is in the boiler. And as you can see, we have 0 water, so we've got 0 water down here. Next is the pounds per square inch, or the PSI. The running pressure of most locomotives is going to vary, realistically. It will also vary with the gauge that you've made it for. This is also true with the buckets. And it also will change its max speed. Pretty much all the statistics will change depending on which gauge you're on. If you're on a different gauge than what it was intended for, the stats will be different than what is originally listed. If you pick the item up after you fully made it for that gauge and you hover over it, it will give the actual statistics for that locomotive once it's updated. Last but not least, we have the temperature. Now, you'll see that currently it is at 18 Celsius. This is the ambient temperature for this biome. We do a small bit of ambient temperature changes depending on which biome you are in. So like if you're in a desert, it's going to be slightly hotter than if you were, say, in a plains biome or a Arctic biome. So once you've got that down, we kind of need to fire this up, if you will. Now, the way that a firing up sequence works is that you're going to want some, and again, this is specifically for steam. I'll do diesel in just a moment. So we're going to want a bucket of water. Grab actually a couple of these. Actually, nope. Thought I had a setup that had all of the stuff I needed. Guess not. So let me just really quickly grab just a bunch of buckets of water. Now, something that's of quick note is that if you shift right click on any sort of rolling stock, it will bring up the GUI as if you're actually sitting in it. Oh, I do have all the stuff that I need. Lovely. So I'm just going to fill this to about halfway to speed up this process. So next, you're going to want to put some stuff in the firebox. So in this case, I'm using blocks of coal, and I'm putting them in each of these slots. The amount of... now you can hear that there's a idle sound running. There's a specific way that's calculated for when the sound runs. I don't remember off the top of my head, sadly. So, you'll see that I have each of these slots burning. The more slots you have burning, the faster you're going to raise temperature and boiler pressure. So, see, that's slowly climbing. Let me place down a... let me kind of move away a small bit. That sound carries, jeez. let me place down a diesel while that's occurring. Let me just go to the 40 tonner and actually place it down over here. So this is a diesel, and again, the crafting is very similar to a steam locomotive actually for this. If you right click this, you'll see you only have this empty space. I'm using biodiesel for the fuel. Each diesel needs fuel, but what fuel you can use is determined by a configuration. So you can change what is accepted and what isn't. We do have some baseline ingredients that you can use, but that doesn't mean that that's all you can use. You can add in other stuff and change how fastly it burns through those objects. So let me really quickly pop into here. Alright, lovely. As you can see down at the bottom, we have 100 Celsius. That is the temperature in which water starts to boil and create steam. And you'll notice that steam is slowly building. Now, if I apply brake full and I open the throttle, no, that kind of failed. But if you open the throttle full and you're not burning quickly enough, you will not create any steam pressure. You need to have the throttle at either at 0 or have a lot more stuff burning in order to create steam pressure if you want to have the throttle at anything beyond, say, a quarter, like half open for that direction. So for my controls, I have them marked to my keypad for quick reference. So I have brake control, and I don't remember what the default configuration is for this, and you can easily change these, and I would recommend. I don't like the baseline configuration for the controls. But for me, I have 7 and 1 set to brake, and 4 is the 0 brake. So if I just press that, it'll just go to 0. The same is true for 5 with throttle, which is 8, 5, and 2 for me. 8 is, oh, and you can hear the, we have reached max pressure. So if I increase throttle using 8, you notice we'll start moving. Let me just really quickly open. You'll see we're moving quite nicely. If we open this up, we get quite the gate going. Oh, shoot. You'll see that I had to use the throttle to kind of brake. Because actually, no, I think I just reached straight up the end of the track. Yeah, I reached straight up the end of the track. But as you can see, these actually can go quite quickly if you're at full pressure. So now I've shown that, and mind you, if you don't have pressure, you're not going to go anywhere. And each locomotive has like a baseline pressure that you need to have before you can start moving. I don't know what it is for each locomotive. My rule of thumb is quarter of the bar. If it's at quarter of the bar, you can start moving, but I would recommend at half the max pressure before you actually start doing stuff. So now I've got that down. So this is the box cab, and again, this is my configuration. For diesels, you need to turn them on. So for me, it's the plus, and you'll notice there's like a background sound that starts occurring. And if you look down at the bottom, you will see a temperature. In order for the diesels to move, it's got to be at a specific temperature. I believe it's at either 75 or 80 degrees Celsius before they can actually start moving. And it also limits how much the throttle can be opened. So there's that. I'm going to let that warm up for a bit. Now, there are realistically... quick explanation on why I need that rail former. So for when you're making rails, you need to first of all make a rail casting. And let's say I need standard. Do a single casting. So now I've got this big red object in my hand, and if I right click on the rail, it consumes it and I get rail segments. And again, these are gauge specific, so you can't use the wrong gauge when trying to lay that track down. And you need rail segments in order to make all of these. Distance and how much is consumed for that distance is dependent on the gauge. And you will also need treated wood from Immersive Engineering, or just treated wood in general, in order to make these ties. Again, gauge specific how much distance changes how much you actually need. So it's still warming up. So what do these last two objects do? So the steam hammer and the boiler roller, I think is what it was actually called. So let's make another locomotive, shall we? Let's go with the mogul, just because I think it looks kind of nice. Actually, no. Let me go with the K36. So you'll see I have a ton of objects here that I all need to craft. So let's go with the frame first of all. And let me make this into narrow, just so I don't have people griping about all that. I think it's done. Yeah. Lovely. So I've got a frame down. I've got a frame now. Just place this down. So now we've got a frame. That's lovely. What do we do next? Well, let me grab a wrench and find out. So we need a steam chest. And again, you'll notice that some locomotives don't need this. That's true. A lot of locomotives do need all these parts though. It just so happens that the two Brunel don't really need it. So let's make the steam chest. Lovely. So now I need the bogies and the wheel drivers. I think I need 2 for each. No, it's just the drivers itself. And you'll notice also that if I press single casting, it's not casting anything. That's because there is currently an object in here that has been cast. You cannot have more than one object in the casting basin. So if you're doing, say, the repeat casting, you have to pull out the object each single time. You can't just let it sit for a long time. So just place all this down. Oh, I need one more wheel driver. Whoops. My bad. There we go. Okay. So now that we've got that down, you'll see we need a ton of objects all of a sudden. So we need the union link, the piston rod, radius bar, etc., etc., etc. If you look at all these, you'll see casting power hammer. So what that means is, let me go grab, say, a driving rod. Actually, let me go with piston rod, actually. So let me make 2 of these. So now that you have these, if you hover over it, you will see requires processing in the steam hammer before use. This is what the steam hammer is used for. So if I right click on the steam hammer, and you need to right click on this block specifically, you'll see this nice little GUI. If I place this down, you'll see well, first of all, you'll hear a really loud noise. But you'll also see that this object no longer has that once it's been processed. So let me let that do that. If I place, you'll see that it now has been placed in the train, or on the train rather. So now I've got those, and that kind of explains what the rail hammer is really used for, or the steam hammer. And again, it will say down here casting power hammer if it needs to use the hammer. It will also not let you place it on the locomotive either if it needs to get processed. So if you're trying to place down an object and it won't place, A, check the gauge, first of all, because I've done that. B, see if it's got that red text. So now that we've got, and I'm going to kind of skip a lot of this. So now that we've got parts of this, what about that boiler? So the way that a boiler works is that we need to first of all make a boilerplate. So we are currently doing the K36. You need to select that, and I need to get some more blocks of steel. So let me go ahead and just do that. Give myself a free hand. So now I've got this lovely boilerplate, but I can't use this on the locomotive yet. I have to put it through this. There we go. And you notice a lot of these don't have any animation. We're currently working on putting an animation. But now we have a boiler segment, and this is what we actually put on the locomotive. Now again, I can't really put it on the locomotive because I don't have the parts necessary. But if I did, let me actually grab a K36. So I no longer have, well, hold on. There we go. So if I get rid of this, I put this down here, you'll see that that boiler segment no longer exists because I put it down for this locomotive. And each locomotive, again, needs a different amount of boiler segments. Kind of botch this. Really quickly, you can pick up a locomotive or any rolling stock by shift right clicking. If it is not completed, it will go back to the components. So just be forewarned about that. If it's not done, it will go to the components. Or however many components you have. Let me actually, got that on the wrong gauge. Whoops. Again. Okay. So there we go. So here is a K36. And again, you fire this up normally, just like how I showed you with the Firefly. Real quickly check on this. Lovely. So you can see now down at the bottom, the temperature is green. Sorry, I'm kind of going back and forth on diesel and steam. But if you look down at the bottom, you'll see it's got 76.1 degrees Celsius, and it's green. That green means that we can now move. And as you'll see, if I have the throttle up, it will increase temperature. Each diesel does have a temperature in which it will start to overheat. At that overheat temperature, it will just stop until it is cooled back down to normal operating temperature. So just be forewarned about that you can have the diesels overheat. So now that that's kind of gone over, what about tenders? So the way that tenders work, and let me grab the K36 as tender, is that if I hook this up to the steam locomotive, this has an inventory, and it has both water and also coal inventory. The tender will automatically detect the steam locomotive and will automatically feed in water, if it has water, into the boiler, and the same burnable type into the K30, into that locomotive. So let's say I've got just a bunch of water in here. If I have a block of coal here, let me pull out some of that. It's slowly burning, and if I put in really quickly, this is at 900 or 9 buckets. If I put in some buckets in here, you'll see that this is draining. It is draining into the locomotive, as you can clearly see. So if I put in, say, a block of coal in here, it has disappeared, and it is now gone in. It is now feeding into the locomotive. Now, what I mean by it will not feed in the same type. So if I put, or the wrong type. So if I say put in a block of coal, and you'll see that it's going up. And I put in, say, another burnable type, which is planks. If I put this in here, it has disappeared, but it is not going in. And I think that disappearing is just a glitch currently with this version of IR. But if you go through here, you will see that it is not in here, which is useful for... this is actually how I used to name my locomotives, is I was put in a stick that was named with that specific locomotive name. And because I never burned sticks, it would just stay in that tender. So, I can put in, say, a log. I put this in here. It's not disappearing. So, that's what I mean by that. Now, let's say that I don't want this tender anymore for one reason or another. Let me turn off that rain. So, let's say for one reason or another I don't want this tender anymore. That's when you create the coupling hook. And the coupling hook is made like this, just for steel. And you want to right-click on the two rolling stock that you want to decouple. In this case, the tender and the K36. And you'll see down at the bottom, it says coupler back set to shunting mode, coupler front set to shunting mode. Those couplers refer to the front of that rolling stock, or the back of that rolling stock. In this case, it's the front of the tender and the back of the K36. And if I really quickly use this, you actually go in third person so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. If I couple up to this and I push forward, it will shunt it, but if I say I go backwards, it will not couple up. If I want to couple these back up together, I simply just right click with that coupling hook on both sides again, and you'll see it says set back to normal mode, or set to normal mode. That simply just means that it is now able to be coupled. So you can hear that coupling sound, and now it is coupled again. This is true for any rolling stock, by the way. So now that works. So let's say, for example, I wanted to automatically fill the tender with water. This is kind of getting into some of the more advanced stuff, so if you just wanted like the basics, there you go. If you want to get into some of the more advanced stuff, you start to want to use augments, which are these parts right here. So let's say fluid loader. Let me put this down over here. If I grab a tank, once again, I assure you, I totally have planned this out, every single part of it, no question. If I right-click this with a water bucket, and I roll over this with the locomotive, and you notice also, oh, actually, cursed me, it's not going to do anything because it doesn't have any doesn't have pressure. So let me use the box cap. So if I roll this over the tender over that augment, you'll see that this is now filling with fluid. Now let me really quickly back this up so I can show you something that's interesting about the augments. And this is only true with the loader unloaders, and I think the detectors also are this way. So let's say I am not full. If I right click this augment with, say, the K36, it'll say set augment to act only upon, and then it says that rolling stock, which means that it will only act on that specific type of rolling stock. So let's say I roll that tender back over onto this. It is not, tender is not filling anymore. And again, that works with all the loading augments. We've got a couple other augments too. I'm not going to be going over any of these other augments realistically, except for detector, which just puts out a redstone signal. and then coupler, which does exactly what you think it does. It couples up stuff up together. And then we've also, but going back, we've got the fluid loader and fluid unloader, and the item loader and unloader. These item loaders are how you normally deal with like coal and the burnables. And something, a quick note about the burnables: anything that can be used in a furnace can be burned in a steam locomotive. It's the exact same list. You can add other stuff to that list, but according to Forge, if it is able to be burned in a furnace, is able to be burnt in a steam locomotive. And I think that's really all there is to show. Really, it's actually pretty basic. Oh, something that I do actually want to cover. If you want to take passengers from various places, let me just grab this. Place this down. Actually, can't really show it because there's no villagers around. But if I'm near a village and I right click with this, villagers will get into the passenger cars, and if you transport them somewhere else and you right click again with the whistle, they'll disembark and pay you. That payment is dependent on how far you are from the original location, and you can change what they pay you in, and the coefficient for how much is paid by the distance. I don't remember if it's by block or by kilometer, or what exactly the distance is off the top of my head. But you can change that, and you can change what item they pay you in. Obviously, by default, it's emeralds, but you can change it so they pay you in diamonds, what have you. So that's something of note. And also, if you are running the newest version of IR, let me grab the A1 peppercorn. Place this down over here. While this is lovely and all, I'm sure you probably want it to look slightly different. Some locomotives support texture variants, and the way you can change them is using the paintbrush. If you right click on the peppercorn, you'll see that it changes colors. And this specific locomotive only has one texture variant beyond its normal. But if you want to have you can have other texture variants, more than one. You can actually have theoretically an unlimited amount of texture variants. I won't go into how you deal with texture variants. That's more how you do modeling and that sort of stuff. I might do a tutorial on that later, but if you just right click it with the paintbrush, it will change that text to the next texture in the line, if you will. So now that I've kind of gone over that, you might be wondering, well, what in the world is all of this other gobbledygook you've gotten here if that doesn't do with the base game? So the way that the mod works is that you can add on extra resource packs. You can find these up on the wiki or on the GitHub, or you can find it via the Discord under resource packs. And the way you add these in is really simple, actually, and I'm not sure why people slightly struggle to understand this. They act as resource packs. Simple as that. So the way you deal with them is that if I go into options and resource packs, you'll notice on the left here, I've just got all these packs, and these are just added in like normal resource packs. If I press the open resource pack folder, you will see all these zip files or folders, and I just activate them like normal resource packs, and voila, they are added in. It's actually quite simple, works very well, and again, all the information on these is decided by the modeler and are added in via those resource packs. You can add in locomotives, tenders, normal stock or cargo stock, and passengers. But all that, and it will automatically create the components that you need. So all that, that's literally how all that works. It's really simple, actually. And again, you just download it and you place it in, and voila, there you go. It's now for the server side. If you're running a server with immersive railroading, and you want resource packs, you need to have that resource pack on both ends, so both the client and the server. The client is how the game renders that, or how the game renders that model. The server side is how it gets that information. So there's a very specific way you're supposed to add it into resource packs on the server side. I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I'm fairly certain when you run the server, there will be a config. Either it's config immersive railroading, and you put the resource packs in there, or you'll just see a folder that says immersive railroading, and you want to put it in there. There's a way you're supposed to activate them. I don't remember how you do that. If you want information on that, feel free to ask up on the Discord. Beyond that, that's really the basics of immersive railroading. You'll notice a tiny amount of quirks and that kind of clever stuff, but realistically, that's all there is to it. It's actually moderately simple, well, to a degree. Yeah. Now, going kind of way back to track laying, I'm kind of going over common misconceptions. If you have a track that is, say, this, I'm sorry, but a locomotive cannot make up that slope. If you see a slope like this in real life, it's probably a cog railway, because there is no way that a locomotive would normally be able to go up this steep of a slope. For the common rule of thumb for slopes is that for narrow gauge you want at least a 20. Oh, whoops. This is like the smallest you can have it, and for the standard gauge, it's somewhere around 50, I believe. If you want more information on that, feel free to ask in the Discord, because each person has slightly different feelings and standards for how far the slope has to be. So there's that. And also, if you have a turn that is like this, do not expect locomotives to be able to animate through that turn correctly, because most locomotives aren't able to take that turn in real life. If I try to take the K36 through that turn, it will make it, but it will not look correct, and it might bug out. So, again, if you want information on like what a acceptable curve is, ask on the Discord. If you play on a server, some servers have very specific guidelines on how that is done, like what sort of radius a turn needs to be at minimum. So, for example, if you're going high speed on Red Sands Railroading, or the Red Sands Railroading server, which is the server that I'm a member on, if you're going at normal speeds or if you want a normal speed standard gauge, the curve needs to be at least 300 radius. And there's a way you're supposed to get those. I don't remember specifically, but long story short, MC can get those for you. But anything shorter than that, you are going to get yelled at by some of the moderators. So, now that that's really covered, that's really it. If you have any questions about anything that I've really gone over, feel free to ask in the comments below or via the Discord. I will add a link to the Discord in the description below if you do not have access to it. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Hope this was useful, and I hope to see you around. Bye.